There will be tips that you can take away from this webinar. This will help you elevate your behaviour work so that your results stand out from the crowd, which will ultimately drive more business your way. Also, make sure to watch to the end, because after I've gone through my assessment tips and my top 6 things to remember when you're building a solution, I'm also going to share with you my top 6 tips for being successful in the industry, which I think should help everyone hoping to earn a decent living and help more dogs. It took me over 10 years to work up to a point where I had the knowledge and skills to train other trainers. But now with my international online school, the School of Canine Science, which has over 12,000 students learning with us, I help literally thousands of dog trainers and wannabe dog trainers up their game every day and get there in much less time. So if you do enjoy this free training and you want to enrol in our full course, Puppy Lab, then I'll be providing an exclusive discount for those of you who want to learn more from me than what I can just provide in 1 free hour. Now, before we jump in deep, let me give you a quick background into who I am and why you want to listen to me in the first place. My name is Jo Rosie Haffenden and I'm based out of Coen in southern Spain. I have a degree in psychology and a postgraduate in animal behaviour. During my life as a trainer and behaviourist, I've worked for a large-scale rescue, worked for a private company, and I built my own company with 6 full-time trainers. I'm also approved as an expert witness. In 2015, I published my first book, and then in 2016, I was invited to audition for Channel 4's rescue dog Superdog, which I then got and presented alongside my now fiancé and business partner, Nando Brown. In 2017, we were invited to present another mainstream British TV series and write 2 books which were published alongside the show. Last year, I was asked to work on a pilot called Train Your Baby Like a Dog by Channel 4, and I was in every national newspaper and featured in every national morning TV show, along with making headlines in Australia and in the USA and across Europe. All of this profile raising has allowed me some incredible experiences, training trainers and training dogs all over the world. Working with celebrity dogs, training dogs for TV and advertising role, working with some of the most dangerous dogs and some of the most talented dogs and some of the most talented dog trainers in the world. I currently live with my own 8 dogs, 3 Malinois, one of which is Blake, my sports dog I'm training for Mondio Ring, a Spaniel and a Vizsla who are pet dogs but also do scent work, and of course Archie, my beloved pit bull, who's now 12 years old, but who's taught me so much about dogs, as well as Nube and Cortado, 2 foster puppy Mastines that we rescued 5 months ago. In a nutshell, I've learned what it takes to train dogs and work with high-level behaviour cases. And so I'm excited to share some of my insights with you right now. Between 23 and 55% of the population believe that their dog has separation anxiety. And one study suggested that it makes up as much as 40% of a behaviourist caseload. So let's go back to the beginning and let's take a look at human separation anxiety and when that hit the limelight to gain a little bit of perspective. In the 1930s, there was a seminal psychologist called John Bowlby. Along with the work of Mary Ainsworth, these 2 took ideas from mythology, cybernetics, information processing, developmental psychology, and psychoanalysis, and they reinvented how we consider the tie a child has with their parent. They thought about attachment bonds and looked to characterise different types of relationship. They looked at response to separation and how the various types of attachment affected this in small children. Bowlby put attachment styles into 3 main boxes: secure, insecure, and avoidant. Generally, these 3, although sometimes named differently and often with the addition of another one, are the ones that we look at when it comes to companion animals too. Over time, others have also been added, such as anxious attachment. Studies have looked to characterise adult and romantic relationships too, with common types being secure, anxious preoccupied, dismissive avoidance, and fearful avoidant. Although when working with children and animals, research usually agrees that there are 4 main types, Bowlby's original types, plus that anxious attachment. The theory of attachment has earned a place on every psychologist's bookshelf, including those who work with companion animals. There are a few studies, but specifically Serpell in 1996, who looked at the canine attachment bonds, specifically in pet dogs, and he found that there were extremely similar to those found between children and their primary caregivers. Such similarities have included seeking proximity when they're scared or in a novel environment, exploring novel objects in a gradual proximity to their caregiver, and challenging situations appearing more challenging in the absence of their chosen person, as well as the attachment bond affecting the human's perception of things like problem behaviour as well. Researchers have also noted that humans' personality and attachment type can hugely influence how the attachment bond with their dog develops. Some studies have suggested that attachment type does affect the likelihood of separation anxiety, and some have suggested that it doesn't. However, of those that have suggested that it doesn't, I'm yet to find one that really deserves any airtime here. Ultimately, the attachment bond a dog has to its owner is the very core of a relationship, which often plays a huge part in so-called separation anxiety. So let's have a look at that ill-defined term. What is canine separation anxiety? This is in and of itself a huge issue because no one really has a clear idea. People use the term to describe puppies that cry behind gates, dogs that can't settle at night, and dogs that chew things and have accidents when they're left alone. Separation anxiety is, of course, an umbrella term in canine behaviour that's used to cover a great many things, including the kind of issues that Bowlby and Ainsworth looked at, as well as much more common things like isolation distress, so that's dogs that don't want to be alone. Scientifically speaking, it's recently been suggested that we should classify separation anxiety as a syndrome, which makes perfect sense. A syndrome is different to a diagnosis, in that a syndrome is a cluster of behaviours that commonly form together and have no specific known cause. This is and has very different merits to a diagnosis too. And thus knowing that the presentation of a behaviour fits under the umbrella diagnosis of separation anxiety and saying this dog has separation anxiety is more like saying this person has a headache than this person has this very specific ear infection and so needs these particular drops. So it doesn't really help us that much. Unfortunately, people still use the name separation anxiety as a way to suggest that that's the beginning and the end of a case. I'm sorry, your dog has separation anxiety, as if that explains it and that tells us how to treat the problem. Perhaps in medicine, if you know what something is, you can often treat before really understanding why it is. In animal behaviour, however, you can classify something as a specific syndrome, but those labels, while still useful in explaining some of the aspects of behaviour, don't lead to any particular treatment plan. We have the tricky job of looking at motivation so that we can work out how to modify behaviour effectively. So if you've got your pen and your pad, I want you to jot these things down. Separation anxiety is a syndrome and not a diagnosis. Attachment styles describe the bonds animals make with their primary caregiver. And lastly, this one, which should be a huge take home. Independence is a natural process that starts when an animal feels secure in his attachment. If you take one thing away from the webinar, it's this. From dependence to independence is a process of trust. That's my most favourite thing that Bowlby has taught me, really. It's a natural process. So when it comes to puppies, we don't teach independence. Instead, we give security, and independence grows off that naturally. That means we don't expose the puppy to loads of absence straight out the box. We do the reverse and, in the words of Bowlby, ensure that we are present and responsive to the infant's needs as frequently as possible. What that means is that independence is a process of development that rides off the back of the baby animal having trust that safety is available. So first we have to ask owners to ensure that they are frequently available to build that attachment. Which is why after COVID-19 or after school holidays, I don't get that worried about lots of separation anxiety cases happening with puppies. What frightens me more is the owners that don't have a longer time off to bond securely with their puppy. Because then, if something does happen during absence, or if the dog is predisposed to feeling scared when they're alone, then there isn't the security of an attachment bond and a readiness for independence to help them cope. Now, what I suggested there is that some dogs are more prone to separation anxiety than others. In fact, many studies suggest that gun dogs are particularly sensitive to absence. In some research by Mills et al., it's noted that they vocalise for longer. And in other studies, gun dog breeds come out on top when it comes to being distressed when they're left alone too. It has been suggested that this might be due to high sociability in those breeds. There are other risk factors as well, including being housed with a dog that already has separation anxiety. Yes, folks, it works that way round, but research also shows that by adding a friend to a dog that already has these issues, it doesn't actually change the behaviour of the dog with the issues. So getting a friend will not help. Males seem more prone than females, and particularly neutered males. I don't really know why. Dogs from shelter environments are, of course, of higher risk too. But there are things that we can do besides just hoping that bond is forming, and I especially suggest this to owners of puppies who do have some of those risk factors. So, without further ado, here are my top 3 exercises for owners to practice to prevent separation anxiety, which also feature in a section of the first night, which is one of the 7 parts of the 7 days, which is one of the modules in the course, the Puppy Lab. Remember, all 3 of these will be more likely and more enjoyable the more secure the puppy feels. Number 1, ask the owner to make a list of household chores and goings on that only take a very small and then incrementally, gradually longer period of time. Start with them going for a wee, but work up to hanging out the washing or calling the mother-in-law. Now, on week 1, every time that the client does the easiest absence, so let's say going for a wee, the owner will scatter some of their puppy's daily food ration on the floor for him to potter around and find whilst they're in the lav. As the days go on, then the puppy finds these micro absences easier and easier. Start trying for longer and longer absences. This is a gentle way to expose the puppy to being on his own and then allowing him to recover, which will lay really strong foundations for more impressive absences later on. Number two is one of my all-time favourite games for baby dogs. This game needs to be carefully managed if you have multiple dogs, but other than that, it's pretty much a cinch and it's so profitable for owners. Basically get something smelly, delicious and nice and tie it up in the kitchen. Get the owner to sit at the laptop or else go and watch their favourite film and boom, you've got them training and they don't even know it. Basically what goes on here is that the puppy takes the risk to leave the owner and go and do something in the room away from them, and it pays off. This develops confidence and curiosity, and it rewards the puppy for taking that risk. Number 3, just as easy as the others, this third game is the eat away game. Get the owners a handy confinement area. Kids' playpens work really well, and it might be worth you having a little puppy equipment library of this and other things for owners to rent from you should they need. Right, so get them to set it up next to where they eat. Whilst they eat, the puppy can also eat something like a Kong. Every time they have a meal, move the puppy slightly further and slightly further away. If they start struggling, just move them back towards them again and try the added distance the following day. These 3 little gems help new dogs and puppies to get used to a little bit of distance, and it teaches them some tolerance to frustration so they understand they can't always get to who they want. When it's time to start leaving them for real, they'll be set up for gradual success. For the rest of the time, whilst the owners aren't playing these games, they need to be there for their puppy frequently. Play and train and cuddle. No, you can't overlove them into separation anxiety. And actually, in our experience, the more separation you impose and the more you ignore them when they try and solicit attention, the more likely they are to worry when you've gone that you're not going to come back. Whilst with any baby animal, feeling a little bit concerned about being alone or absent from a trusted attachment figure is totally normal and simply a case of confidence building, with adult dogs, the issue of separation is a bit different. The latest research on the subject is carried out by Asis, Matos, Pike, Berman and Mills in 2020, and it indicated that there are 4 main underlying frustrations, which fits perfectly with my own model built on my experience. They are described as, number 1, dogs that find people leaving aversive, and I call this in-group, out-group reactivity. Number 2, dogs who always focus on getting away from something in the house. I just call this one fear of being alone. Number 3, wanting to get to something outside. I call this one dogs who want to get to their people. And number 4, a form of boredom, dogs whose needs are not being met. This research backs up that it's often less about how the dog feels about a particular person and more about other stuff that's going on. It lends itself to better training plans too. Whilst attachment bonds are important to puppies and new shelter dogs in generating foundations to help dogs to feel secure enough to be independent, and those prevention exercises can definitely still be useful with these adult dogs when it comes to helping this along, emphasis should be placed on other areas such as frustration tolerance and ensuring that the dog's needs are met. Our experience is in agreement with the conclusions of this study, which is the largest study of the problem yet to have been undertaken with more than 2,700 dogs represented. And that is that although triggered by an owner leaving, the problem is more because of a combination of the dog's relationship with their owner, their attachment, the dog's temperament, and also their specific needs not being met. So, what I want to look at here is this particular study in more depth. But in true canine science style, I want to ensure that there is some direct application to your learning for your business. So I'm going to talk you through what to look for in an assessment in an attempt to work out which type of separation and issue the dog has, as well as describe how the study has characterised the types. Then after that, we can look at actual exercises to help. The study took more than 2,700 dogs and looks at all the behaviours that they displayed when they were left. Patterns were found that ended up creating 4 main groups, although there were obviously some subgroups as well. The first and the smallest group were classified as having exit frustration, which is when the dog finds the act of the person leaving aversive, and thus may aggress towards that person or towards furniture and redirect it somewhere else in that area. In my experience, this can be based on breed, with herding breeds and stock garden breeds who have been selected to find things moving out of a group a trigger for reaction and regrouping more likely. This is, in my opinion, rarely anything to do with absence. It's very obvious when you see the dog because the dog becomes extremely reactive when a member of the group attempts to leave, sometimes not even the primary caregiver. Again, in my experience, I've seen this the most common in Shepherds, Collies and in some Mastiff types as well. This is simple to explain as these dogs are selected to keep a flock together, and thus when an in-group attempts to leave, the dog is designed to prevent that. This can cause arousal and reactivity, and then if they don't have the inhibition to not to bite people, then sometimes they'll redirect it onto furniture and stuff as well. You'll know this when you see it, I promise. Cluster B made up 29% of separation issues in the study. They presented with redirected frustration, reactive communication, barking, etc., and what the researchers classed as social panic. In our experience here, we're talking about dogs who show what you might class as traditional separation issue. The researchers suggested that the dogs want to get to something that they can't get to, which is what causes the frustration. I would apply that to my experience and say that the dogs want to be with their owner. They can't get to their owner. They don't want to be locked in, and so they attempt to escape. I once worked with a pointer who, prior to our work, smashed windows to escape 3 times. These dogs are dogs that usually want to get to their person, but some of them just want to get out. They don't want to be confined, and they find confinement extremely hard. They're likely to show barrier frustration if they're put in a crate or shut in a room when their owners are even in the house. One way to look at this is to ask the owners to put the dog in the garden or in another room or just behind a baby gate whilst you talk through the history and see the dog's reaction. Low frustration tolerance is often seen generally, and the dogs are usually fairly confident in nature and don't lean towards general anxiety. If I'm honest, these guys are often dogs whose needs are not being met, and often it's as much to do with just getting to the owner as it is just getting out of that confinement and having something to do. Cluster C is the largest group at 35.6% of the population. The researchers suggest that these guys present with reactive communication, so barking, etc., as well as social panic, but they're not so frustrated. My feeling based on my experience is that these guys would be okay to be put in a baby pen whilst the owners worked at a desk, for example, and may do fine in a crate or in another room while you have a conversation. These dogs are generally more anxious on the whole, and they need social support from their owners. Our 3 tips for prevention would actually likely help these guys build confidence loads. This group is the group that I have most commonly partnered up with a vet for the case and combine medication programs with behaviour modification ones. Things to look out for here are elimination, i.e. toileting in the house, which is much higher in this group, as well as general anxiety. It was mentioned in the study, and our experience would totally agree, that dogs who have an insecure relationship with their owners are at much greater risk of this type of separation issue. But I would also like to suggest that it works both ways, so dogs with this type of anxiety also find it harder to bond and feel secure. I'd translate this as dogs who are scared to be alone. Cluster D is classified as boredom, but the authors note that this is a catch net group that includes all the different dogs that didn't fit into any other group. They suggested that often these dogs just hadn't really been exposed to absence very much before and needed time to build a more secure attachment, as well as prevention exercises, so I guess what we've already talked about. Now, for different groups, you might wish to do things in a different order, but most of the pre-consult program I'm about to describe would help any dog enjoy separation more, with the exception maybe of Cluster A, who would need an entirely different training plan and, in my opinion, shouldn't be seen as separation at all. All dogs need a mix of mental and physical stimulation to feel satisfied. We have to think about how we can reduce frustration, especially in group B and D. One walk a day just often doesn't cut it. When you think about your client's day before they leave, do they find a way to relieve their dog mentally and physically? Right, now it's time to test it. For the first 3 days of the program, you're going to get your client to change the routine before they leave the dog alone. This is a fail-safe routine, which is designed to fix common little issues that can result in the dogs getting stressy or destructive when they're left by themselves. First comes the physical. If we walk our dogs just before we leave them, which seems like common sense, have a think about what their chemistry might be like. Have you ever tried to go to the gym and then go and have a nap? It's almost impossible. In fact, there are loads of studies that suggest that if you go to the gym late in the day, you're more susceptible to insomnia. The body is experiencing a rush of endorphins and your temperature is higher, which makes you more awake and more aroused. A dog needs time to come down from a walk, and likely, especially with group C dogs who are prone to anxiety and may have experienced triggers on that walk. So, 30 minutes walk first and around an hour at least before leaving them after that. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to boggle that brain. On our YouTube channel, there are tons of free exercises that you can try with your owners, but try and find something that will be a quick win for them. Remember too that they're 45% more likely to stay on your course with a training plan if there is an exercise that they like, and 65% more likely to carry out the training regularly if they feel that it is easy to do. Spins, targets, middles, picking things up on cue, positions like beg, chin rests, things like that will be much easier than proper obedience or complex chains. This step helps the Group C dogs too, as evidence would suggest that training together is one of the best ways to improve trust and help a bond to grow. Right, so 30 minutes walking, 15 minutes training, and then what? Well, it's likely that whilst the exercise high has subsided, there's a little mental high after the training as well. So next up, get the owner to give the dog a food toy to work on. This could be a Kong, a frozen Kong, a bottle with treats in and holes in, or a simple food treasure hunt. But it's something for him to do on his own and keep busy with whilst they get ready, the owners, to venture out of the house. This helps our D group also learn to enjoy periods where the owner is in the house, but they are separated to do something different. This gentle exposure to soft absences also primes our Group C to not feel quite so worried. Get them to do this each and every time the owners leave the house, in that order. Obviously, it's not going to fix or change a dog who is generally really anxious about being left. So Group C's and some of Group B's, although the regular one-to-one training and exercise might make them feel more secure in their relationship, which will help. It will weed out if that anxiety is exacerbated by a lack of physical or mental stimulation, and it will explore other components that fall in. For Group B dogs, during the training sessions, I'd recommend working on leave it, stays with distractions and out of sight stays, as well as games with toys that involve the dog having to practice restraint and control around biting or chasing the toy. This will also help them to learn about frustration tolerance. During this programme, I'll go back to the first and third Puppy Lab games too, and invite the owners to practice very short and easy confinement games for their dinner, as well as those micro absences. For our frustrated Group Bs, these things can really pay off and make a huge difference to their frustration levels. For Group C, confidence should be built slowly and carefully. Meds are definitely a great idea, and speaking to a vet about this is the right course of action if the dog is stuck, feeling a little bit too anxious to start a gentle exposure programme. If the changes above haven't changed the dog's behaviour when the owners leave, I would start with desensitising the dog to the person leaving. To do this, I would first teach relaxation in a particular spot, and then once that's done, I would repeat leaving protocols over many, many reps, gradually until the dog stays relaxed during the whole leaving process. I would then, once that's done as a separate exercise, work gradually to habituate the dog to absence by repeating very short and increasing absences without the use of boredom busters until the dog can manage at least 10 minutes without vocalising or reacting. So, before I leave you, I want to give you another gift. 5 quick tips when trying to implement the right solution to a so-called separation anxiety issue. These things are so often missed. Tip 1. Where does your client leave their dog? Certainly for Group B and C, leaving the dog with easy visual access to stimulus like passing people outside makes absolutely no sense. This could lead to a frustrated dog feeling more rageful that he can't get to these things, and an anxious one more worried that there's no support. Put Buster somewhere he loves to sleep. My dogs like to sleep on the sofa or the bed best of all, and these rooms are quiet and calm and there's no visual access to the outside world. So of course this will be where I leave them if I want them to be sleepy and to chill. Don't forget to also ask the client what they sound like when they are in. Whilst it's pointless trying to fake that you're in the house, cushioning the stark difference between your presence and your absence is common sense. Try a radio with some cool classical music. Actually, some research suggests that dogs like reggae the best, or a decent Tom Hardy film. It's not pretending that you're in, but it will likely make an anxious dog feel more likely to forget that he's all alone. This also helps mask noises that Group C dogs might find worrying. Tip 2. Don't use those beautiful boredom busters like Kongs until the dog can manage at least 10 minutes absence without panic and stress. Boredom busters can become cues for anxiety, or they can simply distract the dog for 10 minutes, whilst the owner gets further away and less likely to come back to their stressed out dog. Once the dog has learned through absence training that they can tolerate and manage being alone, then add that fun stuff. Tip 3, insist they have a poo. You know that 30-minute walk you just promised your client's dogs each time that your client leaves him? Well, this kind of commitment isn't always upheld. So explain that even on those really bad days where he just gets out to the garden, make sure as hell that the dog has done his business. Nothing ramps up anxiety harder than needing a poo and not being able to go. We all know this, especially for those Group C dogs. In fact, I've worked with some Group C dogs who I can trace back the moment that they developed separation anxiety down to that bad tummy and absent owners. Tip 4, remote consult. Remote consults are prime for these issues. Not being there in person means that you don't suffer with all those experimental effects. He never usually does that. He must know you're a dog trainer. And setting up the video call allows you to watch the dog when the owner leaves, rather than trying to take things blind and juggle a lot of things at once. A lot of people actually have much worse separation anxiety than they think. And so whilst they are out crying and howling in the car, their dog is perfectly chill. So after undertaking prevention training and following the routine, make sure that you have a call like this so that you can check that the dog you're working with is still struggling before you charge your client more. Tip 5, look at the dog's whole day as a stretch of time and make sure that activity for him is spread out. Often owners only play and train and walk when they return from work. Not only does this leave a bored and frustrated Fido when they're leaving them, but also it can make the dog feel even worse about the owner leaving and desperate for them to come home. I've got a menu of activities that I use with a point system so that owners can enter their points and ensure that they've met their dog's expectations with different daily activities. I can't go into all the solutions for separation anxiety problems in this one webinar, or what's meant to be an hour will be a week long. So my last little bit of advice is that if a dog can't be left, then the owner still has to go out. But there are lots of options for people to have the dog, including friends, family members, students from the local animal care college who will often do it for cheap or free, pet sitters and dog walkers. So quickly now, I want to shift gears and talk about how to actually make money once you've learned some of this knowledge and how to apply it sufficiently so that you've got decent assessments. What I've found is that taking a deposit for the case and having a 4-week program prior to a proper consult is a very business savvy way of running these cases. Put in the routine before owner tries an absence, ensure the dog's day are balanced out with things that are spread during the day, and try those 3 prevention techniques to help build confidence and security and to encourage independence. Do something to put coins in the relationship slot as well, although training should do that if they follow the absence routine. The deposit the owner should pay should be around 30 to 50% of your full consult figure. In my experience, 80% of cases, certainly for Group B and Group D, can be resolved just using these methods, which means that you're still paid and your owner has a better understanding and their relationship with their dog has improved, but you haven't needed to actually visit them and take a lengthy in-person consult or write a report. So there it is. Those are my secrets to supercharging your separation anxiety cases. Hopefully you took away some good notes and you've gained some valuable insights. And I would suggest you start implementing some of these with your clients immediately. If you want to learn more information like this beyond just separation anxiety cases, then we have the Puppy Lab, which is our professional 6-month course. Why puppies? Well, firstly, I believe that trainers should begin at the beginning. It was the first course that we made for a reason, to teach people how to train dogs. First, they have to understand what affects who the dog is right from the womb, the physical and neurological development, genetics, as well as training. People get puppies wrong, and that is why we see so many problem dogs when they're older. Secondly, if done right, puppies will feed your entire business. 70% will come back to your next class, 55% will want one-to-ones, and 31% will come back with a behaviour problem with this or another dog they get in our experience. Puppies are clients for life, and if you get the packages right, they will make you make a living. Just to give you an idea of what's in the Puppy Lab, we have a full section dedicated to helping you understand the 7 most common problems that puppy owners have. We also have a full puppy development module, which will help you to understand the stages of development, what happens, and how that affects behaviour when the dogs are older. Understanding what happens during the prenatal, neonatal, transitional, and the sensitive period, as well as what the science actually says about when dogs go through these periods and how, is so important when it comes to working with adult dogs. And we have a bonus section about stress inoculation in this module, just because it's so important. It's one of those really misunderstood concepts. In the next section, we go through learning theory. This will, I promise you, be unlike any learning theory you've learned on a dog training course before. We bought the original papers and we bought the original books, and we got the information straight from horses' mouths. No bullshit, no watering it down. because we had all been taught various versions of Skinner and Pavlov that were incorrect, and we really wanted to right some of these wrongs. This is the section that we've most been criticised about when it comes to our competition as a result of controversial fact checks, such as that Pavlov's conditioning experiment didn't have a bell in it and Skinner never used the term or a diagram of the quadrant. And we also go through why using a quadrant leads to some of the biggest misunderstandings in dog training, such as that reinforcement can't be aversive. And we march through a host of very important and relevant theorists like Kamin and his conditioned avoidance response, who many dog trainers have never even heard of. We want this to be applicable, and you'll never be asked to repeat learning theory to your clients. As a result of that, we added part on the end of each section explaining and of course practically demonstrating with our own and client dogs how these theories are used in real life. We recognised quickly that rather than focusing on specific exercises or protocols, what students really wanted was a clear step-by-step 6-week course. So we taught the entirety of a 6-week puppy course on film, exercise by exercise with alternative exercises and downloadable lesson plans too. Last but not least, we have the social puppy. I worked for years in rescue, and so many adolescent dogs have been brought in as a result of poor integrations with other animals. The dog doesn't get on with my baby, my dog, my child, my cat, my mouse, my bird, my horse, or he doesn't like other dogs out in public. And thus in this section we look at ensuring a slow and thorough integration process. It also includes how we personally deal with tricky social situations regarding what to do when you have a puppy, for example, in your class, who only seems to want to intimidate or bully other puppies, as well as some handy explanations that you can use with owners. The Puppy Lab is so in-depth, it's probably the most in-depth dog training course on the internet. And I hope that you can see from this webinar that we don't cut corners with fillers. We're just trying to provide you with value that will improve your business, your confidence and your bottom line. With that in mind, in this training, the next thing that I wanted to go through was my 6 tips for professional success in this tricky industry. Before this though, I'm also going to pull up a quick exclusive discount on the Puppy Lab course. On top of more than 40 sections across 5 modules, all with bibliography so that you can read the science straight from the horse's mouth, as well as transcripts for those of you who like to download and read information rather than just watch it online. We also include chat sections after each module. We felt like we had so many discussions, debates and a lot of arguments whilst we were writing the course, and we felt like those discussions were really valuable content to share, so we filmed them and we added them to the course. And then at the end of each section we provided quizzes so that you can take them and see if you've missed anything and then go back and relearn any concepts you've missed. That is the content in a nutshell for you. Like I said, we're always adding new content as well when we learn new things. We want to keep the learning relevant and up to date. We recently added 7 bespoke fresh recipes designed specifically for puppies in our nutrition section, which is part of the 7-day module. All of this as well as access to private members only Facebook group, which has nearly 4,000 other professionals helping and supporting each other. Members have even said that they've got so much value from the Facebook group that alone would be worth the cost of the course. A member recently told me that she learnt more in Puppy Lab than she did during her first time at university. So as valued by our current members, this programme is worth well more than £9,000. But I currently have it priced at £495. But as an exclusive offer for you guys, if you buy during this webinar, then you're going to get an additional 40% off. So just £297, and that's including VAT. Click on the link that I'm going to provide here in a second. And once you click on that link, it's going to take you through to a custom discount page. Click on the buy button, set up your account with your email and your password, and then you're going to see that 40% off discount already factored in. We even have a full money back 14-day guarantee. If you don't like the course, we don't want your money. We only want clients that feel like the value they get from the course exceeds what they paid for it. We want you to make more money than you've spent on the Puppy Lab. And I'm confident that if you're ready, jump straight in on this discount. I'll talk a little bit more about the programme at the end and answer some questions, but right now I'm going to walk you through those 6 steps to success in this an incredibly difficult industry. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about how I got started and how I got to where I am. So my first tip for success in the dog training industry is to invest in yourself. You have to be willing to spend money if you want to make money and learn to be good. When I started, I went to university, obviously, and then I worked whilst I was gaining my postgrad. I took a leap of faith and I had a whole premise built when I first went freelance, and I spent thousands assisting other expert witnesses for free when I decided that that was where I wanted to be in the industry. Be willing to take risks, but be careful to calculate those risks. Speak to people who have done courses or been on mentorships and people who decided to go elsewhere. Be willing to invest in your future. I can't emphasize that enough. I still invest in myself now, and I continue to spend money every single week on courses, seminars, and practical opportunities, and I've never once regretted it. Tip number 2, master your skills. What separates you from every other dog trainer out there? So many trainers end up showing a massive bias in one area. Either they know their shit really, really well, or they are brilliant at training dogs. We will teach you how to do it, and we will teach you why you're doing it, rich and deep and far and wide. But you have to go out and you have to practice. Master those skills, drill them at night. I didn't properly understand this until I've been doing the job for about 3 years. At this point, I decided to go and attend a seminar of a colleague of mine, and I could see that whilst my chat was great, I just didn't have the mechanics that he had. It hit me like a brick, and as soon as I started working on those mechanics, I realised what I and so many of my clients had been missing out on. You can get by and you can earn a living as an armchair behaviourist, just understanding and having a good knowledge, but you shouldn't do that to yourself or your clients. They deserve more. Invest in a course with application and practice the hell out of exercises if people are willing to take the time to teach them to you. Tip number 3 is build a toolkit. This is huge. If you've been on a course that teaches you how to teach your dog a middle, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go on the next one that also teaches you that same skill differently. You need to have the ability to quickly change to an alternative way of teaching when a dog or an owner struggles. There are tons of ways to teach you every behaviour, and you should know at least 3. In Puppy Lab, during the 6-week puppy course, we ensure that you learn multiple ways to teach the same thing. Remember, you can't learn everything all at once, so a good rule of thumb is to learn to train what you want to get hired for. If you want to train people to do agility, then perfect your agility toolkit. If you want to run a pet dog training company, then learn that. Number 4 is to become science literate. To do this, you need to learn to question the experts. For years, teachers have taught me things that are wrong. I've been taught that positive reinforcement has to feel good for the dog. I've been taught that punishment doesn't work. And I was taught that 8 weeks old was the right time to take a puppy home. It's so easy to trust something because you think it's based on science. It doesn't give you facts. So make sure that you become curious and interested and learn to ask questions about everything. Just because I'm sitting here behind this camera doesn't mean that I'm always right. Always question me. Question all of your teachers. Don't let your ego stop you from asking a question. Become a good learner by identifying what you don't know, what you need to know, and then finding someone who you think knows it and bloody listen to them before you start asking questions. But then don't be afraid to ask questions afterwards. Tip number 5 is market yourself. If you don't feel confident in your skill level yet, then do number 1 and number 2 more. You have to put your work out there. Use social media to get owners watching you, because the more owners' eyes that watch you train your videos, the greater the chances are that someone with a dog will need your help and will hire you. Without fail, every time I post a new video, I get more people with dogs that need training approaching me. But marketing doesn't stop online. Both me and Nando used demoing in public. Go to public places. Go to the field to train instead of the garden. Practice your tricks at the vets whilst you wait for an appointment. Stop at the coffee shop and showcase your loose lead, your chilled dog. And when you leave, ask the dog to wave at the barista. It will get you clients, I promise. So lastly, number 6 is add value first. I live by this principle. I learned it from a filmmaker called Parker Warbeck. He calls it free to fee. In other words, be willing to work for free before you charge. I used to do it loads when I was a dog trainer as well. My school would give away free puppy socialisation sessions at the vets and at pet shops. We'd give free 20-minute park sessions in the park. We would give loads of content away on YouTube, and we still do. Look, I'm even doing it now with this webinar. Work out what services you should charge for and ensure you're charging the right amount. We do go over how much services should be in the Puppy Lab, and we do explore some of the packages that you should be offering. I promise you, if you go into a vet's and you say that you want to give away a free lecture about the importance of puppy classes to your local vets, they will say yes. I gave tons of lectures to tons of vets, to rescues, to groomers, to kennels, to walkers, to pick up their behaviour cases. The likelihood is, if you are attending this webinar, it's that you've already got some sort of free content from me elsewhere and you've liked it. When I started travelling to teach more, I began to build a larger social media following. When I decided to sell my own training company, it was to teach you guys how to find the success and the job satisfaction that I already had. I asked you lot what you wanted to learn, and then we took your answers, and that's basically how we built the entire curriculum for Puppy Lab. The social media group really has taken on a life of its own as well and become the backbone for the courses that we choose to film and that we choose to teach. Something I didn't mention is that we also run challenges and we do lives, including live Q&As on the group. We put a lot of effort into ensuring everyone is motivated to continue their learning journey, and we help those who lose their training mojo. Me, Nando and Dean are always available to tag, but the thing that I love best about our Facebook group is just how many other trainers are quick to help each other out, give feedback on videos of training and answer pleas for research papers. Once again, on the course, we really left no stone unturned. We read the papers and the books firsthand, and we ensured that we were always teaching how and why we chose particular methods or theories, but also literally walked you through our own training mechanics and method choices. We opened the door to our own curriculum and even have the lesson plans there for you to download so that you can literally download lesson plans and start teaching those exercises the next day. So there it is, that's the Puppy Lab. That's some of what's included in its lifelong membership. There is only one upfront cost and you will have access to all the current content and all the future content for life. You can watch as many times as you like at your own pace, at your computer or on your phone. And again, our ultimate goal with this program was to raise the bar of dog training education and also to ensure that you make money whilst being a kick-ass dog trainer. It doesn't matter what part of the industry you work in, with working dogs, sports dogs, pet dogs, behaviour, or even grooming, sitting and walking. If you work with dogs in any capacity, this course will grow you as a professional and it will give you the confidence to grow your services and your business. There's never been a better time to specifically offer puppy packages. The number of puppy owners has been on the rise since COVID-19, and the number of puppies going into new homes but also ending up in rescue is a pandemic of its own. Not only that, but the professional pet market has grown every year for the last 10 years. And now with even more dog trainers than ever, it's important that you have the skills and the know-how to stand out. If you're worried that the dog trainer market is oversaturated, I hate to be the one to say it, but please do realise that it's only oversaturated with a bunch of average or below average dog trainers. If you take the steps necessary to elevate yourself as an expert, then you will have more work than you know what to do with. I turn down about 90% of the job offers that I get, and I only take the most desperate, the most interesting, or the most exciting ones I get now, and I pass all the others over to my students. And that is the whole point of Puppy Lab. Enough is enough with below par dog trainers. Get yourself the knowledge and the skills to elevate yourself and your business and stand out from the crowd. So guys, the offer is there for the next few minutes. The money back guarantee is also there. Now, if you still have any questions or doubts about taking this course, feel free to email me at info@caninescience.co.uk, but I'll go ahead and answer the most frequently asked questions I get about the course here. If I do your course, will you accredit me? There is currently very little by the way of regulation when it comes to dog training and behaviour. We believe it is a conflict of interest if a company teaching you is also accrediting you and asking for you to pay to be a part of their membership organisation. Look at it this way, if I teach you and I write the exam and I mark the exam, and it's in my best interest financially for you to pass it and for you to be ready to move on and buy more of my education, then how can I run an unbiased service? Instead, we try to raise the bar by ensuring that the only gain we get from you learning so much in a course is that the general industry standard raises, as well as you coming back to us for more education. Do I have to go to university to become a dog trainer or behaviourist? Nope. There are many routes in. I went to uni, but Dean went to uni to study business, and Nando came in a completely different route. Know your weaknesses. Don't be frightened to work with your strengths. The industry has changed tons since I started, and I think online education can provide you with more depth and better application so long as you become a good learner, have access to good teachers, and have a good work ethic so that you practice your skills. What if I don't train puppies? This course isn't a course about puppies. Even the 6-week puppy course teaches you skills that are applicable for training any dog of any age. It's called the Puppy Lab simply because in order to know dogs well, you have to start at the beginning. And the beginning is puppies. The 7-day survival guide teaches you topics like nutrition, fear, and of course separation, which is where some of the content for today's webinar was pulled from. The social puppy is primed to use with any new pet entering any new house or any new environment. And the learning theory module, it should be taken by any trainer of any animal of any species. Can I ask you questions personally if I have them? Yep, everyone has access to us in the private group. They have access to me, Dean and Nando. But one of the most special things about the course is the sheer volume of direct access people get to professionals and experts, including us, who can help you to troubleshoot, overcome hurdles and push down stumbling blocks. Speaking of questions, hopefully I've answered all of yours. But if you still have questions, then just shoot me an email. Again, it's info@caninescience.co.uk. You can find me on Facebook at Jo Rosie Archie Super Pit & Co, Instagram as Jo Rosie H, and YouTube as the School of Canine Science. And make sure you join these accounts if you want to stay up to date with anything, including any more free webinars that we do. Last off, I want to wish you all the very, very best of luck in all your dog training endeavours. Remember to be confident, to invest in yourself, drills before skills. It's always pros and cons, not rights and wrongs. And if in doubt, shut up and train. But that's it. I'm out. Thanks for coming. And if you have any questions, I'm always here.